The great chamber of the Galactic Council was brighter than usual that day. Thousands of lights floated in the air like small stars, shining over rows of alien leaders. Creatures from hundreds of worlds sat in silence, watching the center of the hall. In the middle of that giant chamber stood one single human. Ambassador Daniel Reyes did not move. His hands were behind his back, and his face was calm. Around him were the most powerful species in the galaxy, but he did not look afraid. At the highest platform sat the High Chancellor of the Galactic Council, a tall alien with silver skin and glowing eyes. His voice echoed through the chamber. Ambassador Reyes of Earth, the Chancellor said slowly, today the Council will decide the future of humanity. A quiet wave of whispers spread across the hall. For many years, humans had tried to become part of the galactic community. They had shared technology, helped rebuild damaged planets, and followed every rule the Council had given them. But many alien races were uncomfortable. Humans learned too fast. They invented things too quickly. And they did not think the same way as the older species. To the ancient civilizations of the galaxy, humanity was unpredictable. And unpredictable things were dangerous. The Chancellor continued speaking. Over the past century, humanity has expanded faster than any species in recorded history. Several alien leaders nodded in agreement. You build ships faster. Your scientists discover new weapons every decade. Your colonies grow without control. One of the warlords suddenly stood from his seat. The creature was massive, covered in thick armor-like skin. The humans cannot be trusted, he shouted. Their kind grows too powerful too quickly. Another senator joined the argument. They already control more than 30 star systems. They experiment with forbidden technologies. They will become a threat to the entire galaxy. The chamber filled with voices. Some species agreed. Others remained silent. But no one defended humanity. Ambassador Reyes listened quietly. Finally the Chancellor raised one hand, and the room became silent again. The Council has made its decision. Every eye in the chamber turned toward the human. The Chancellor spoke the words slowly, as if they carried the weight of the entire galaxy. Humanity is hereby banished from the galactic network. A deep silence followed. No trade with Council members. No access to galactic gates. No diplomatic contact. All human ships must leave Council space immediately. Some alien leaders looked satisfied. Others looked nervous. But the decision had been made. Humanity had been exiled. The Chancellor looked directly at the ambassador. You may return to Earth and inform your species of this ruling. For a moment, the chamber waited. Some expected the human to protest. Others expected anger. But Ambassador Reyes simply looked around the room. Hundreds of alien leaders stared back at him. The rulers of the galaxy. And every one of them believed they had just solved a problem. The human finally spoke. His voice was calm. So this is your final decision? Yes, the Chancellor replied. Reyes nodded slowly. Very well. That was all he said. No anger. No threats. He simply turned around and began walking toward the exit. The large doors of the chamber opened. Before leaving, he stopped for one brief second. Without turning around, he said one final sentence. History will remember this day. Then he walked out. The doors closed behind him. Inside the chamber, some aliens began celebrating quietly. One senator laughed. Humans are finished. They will collapse without our trade. Another leader added. They were too young to survive alone anyway. Even the Chancellor looked satisfied. The galaxy will remain stable. But far away, on Earth, the message from the Council arrived only hours later. Leaders from every human colony gathered in a secure meeting room. The news spread quickly. Humanity had been banished. For several minutes, no one spoke. Then the Supreme Fleet Commander leaned forward. His voice was quiet. "So, they are afraid of us." A scientist sitting beside him nodded. "They always were." Another commander asked the most important question. "What do we do now?" The room became silent again. Then the oldest leader in the room finally answered. His words were calm. "We do exactly what humans have always done." He looked at the star map on the wall. Hundreds of unexplored regions filled the screen. "Now we build, without limits." Around the table, the others slowly began to smile. Because the galaxy believed it had just removed humanity from the future. But in reality, they had just given humanity the entire unknown universe to grow. And humans were very good at growing. For the first few years after humanity was banished, the Galactic Council expected trouble. Many alien leaders believed humans would protest, break the rules, or even start a war. But none of that happened. Human ships quietly left the Council's space. Trade stations once filled with human merchants slowly became empty. The human embassies across the galaxy were closed one by one. Then, nothing. Months passed. Then years. Without human traders, some markets became quieter, but the galaxy continued moving forward. New alliances formed. Old rivalries returned. The Council slowly stopped talking about humanity. To them, the problem had been solved. 100 years later, most species barely remembered the day humans were exiled. Young alien students learned about it only in history lessons. Humans were an ambitious species, their teachers would say. They expanded too quickly, so the Council removed them for the safety of the galaxy. To many citizens of the galaxy, it sounded like a simple story. A dangerous species had been controlled. Peace had been protected. But in the dark regions far beyond the Council's maps, something very different was happening. Humanity had not collapsed. It had changed. When the Council gates closed, human ships turned away from known space and traveled deeper into the unknown regions of the galaxy. These were areas older civilizations had ignored for thousands of years. The stars there were unstable. The planets were harsh. The resources were difficult to reach. But humans had never feared difficult places. In fact, they liked them. Human engineers built massive shipyards near dying stars where no other species wanted to live. Colonies were created on frozen planets, volcanic worlds, and asteroid fields. Instead of slowing down, humanity expanded even faster. Without Council laws restricting their research, human scientists began experimenting with technologies that had once been forbidden. New energy sources. Advanced artificial intelligence. Weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. Gigantic factories were built inside hollow asteroids. Entire moons were turned into ship construction centers. Automated drones mined resources from thousands of systems at once. The human population grew larger every decade. But the galaxy never saw any of this. Because humanity remained silent. No ships returned to Council space. No messages were sent. It was as if humans had disappeared. 2 centuries after the exile, a small alien cargo ship was traveling near the outer edges of mapped space. The crew was transporting minerals to a nearby trade station when their sensors detected something strange. A fleet. At first the captain believed it was a group of asteroids moving together. But the shapes were wrong. Then the scanners began counting the objects. 10 ships. Then 50. Then over 200. The crew stared at the screen in disbelief. The ships were enormous. Each one was larger than the Council's heaviest war cruisers. Their design was unlike anything the galaxy had ever built. Smooth black hulls covered in strange glowing lines. Engines that produced energy readings far stronger than normal starship drives. The alien captain whispered in confusion. "Who built those?" One of the officers zoomed in on the image. There was a symbol painted across the largest ship. A blue planet. Surrounded by stars. The officer's voice trembled. "Captain, that's the old symbol of Earth." The entire bridge fell silent. Humans. After 200 years, they were still out there. But something about these ships was different. They were not merchant vessels. They were not explorers. They were warships. Hundreds of them. And they were heading deeper into the unknown regions of space, as if they were only a small part of something much larger. The alien cargo ship quietly turned around and left the area as fast as possible. Within weeks, the report reached the Galactic Council. Most leaders dismissed it immediately. "It is probably a mistake," one senator said. "Humans could never build ships like that," another added. After all, the council believed humanity had been alone for 200 years. Cut off from trade. Cut off from knowledge. Cut off from the rest of the galaxy. Surely they had become weak. Surely they had fallen behind. But far beyond the borders of known space, thousands of human fleets were already moving between newly built star systems. Entire sectors of the galaxy were slowly falling under human control. The Council simply did not know it yet. Because while the galaxy had forgotten about humanity, humanity had never forgotten the galaxy. 250 years after humanity was banished, the Galactic Council finally began to notice something strange. Trade routes near the outer regions of the galaxy were changing. Entire sectors once used by merchants had become silent. Some explorers reported that navigation beacons had disappeared. Others claimed that long-range scanners detected unknown signals moving through those systems. At first, the Council believed pirates were responsible. Pirates had always existed in the darker corners of space. But the reports kept growing. Ships returning from the frontier described massive structures floating in distant star systems. Some captains claimed they saw entire asteroid belts filled with industrial machines. Others reported strange satellites that blocked long-range scanners. None of it made sense. Then one day a Council exploration fleet was sent to investigate a quiet region known as Sector 918. The fleet contained 6 advanced scout ships and 1 command cruiser. Their mission was simple: scan the system and discover what was hiding there. As the fleet entered the system, the commander felt uneasy. The star system was not empty. Sensors showed thousands of energy signals scattered across nearby planets and asteroids. Factories. Mining stations. Orbital structures. But these facilities were far larger than anything the Council had ever seen. One officer stared at the data in disbelief. "Commander, these readings are impossible." "What do you mean?" the commander asked. "These factories are producing starships." "How many?" The officer swallowed slowly. "Hundreds at the same time." Before the commander could respond, another alarm sounded across the bridge. Multiple contacts detected. The main screen suddenly filled with moving objects. Ships. Dozens at first. Then hundreds. Then thousands. The commander's heart began to race. These ships were enormous. Each one looked heavily armored and carried weapons stronger than anything used by the Council fleets. But what shocked them the most was the organization. These were not pirates. They were military vessels. Perfectly arranged in formation. Waiting. The commander whispered quietly, almost afraid of the answer. "Identify those ships." The scanner officer zoomed in on one of the vessels. On its hull was a symbol. A blue planet. Surrounded by a ring of stars. The officer's voice shook. "Commander, that's the symbol of Earth." Silence filled the bridge. Humans. After centuries of exile, humanity had not disappeared. They had built something far larger than anyone imagined. Before the Council fleet could react, a transmission appeared on the screen. A calm human voice spoke. "You have entered restricted territory." The alien commander stared at the display. Restricted territory. This system is outside Council space. The human voice replied immediately. Yes. This is Human Empire territory. Those words froze everyone on the bridge. Human Empire. The commander looked at the massive fleet surrounding them. How large is this empire? He asked carefully. There was a short pause. Then the human officer answered. Currently we control 412 star systems. Shock spread across the command deck. 400 systems. The Council's largest civilization controlled barely half that number. And humanity had built this empire in secret. The alien commander tried to stay calm. You were banished from the galaxy. The Council never authorized this expansion. The human voice sounded almost amused. You banished us from your galaxy. We simply built our own. Outside the cruiser's window, thousands of human ships moved in perfect formation. Gigantic carriers. Heavy battle cruisers. Defense stations surrounding nearby planets. This was not a hidden colony. This was a civilization built for power. The alien commander realized something terrifying. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for something. Why reveal yourselves now? He asked. For a moment the human officer did not answer. Then the reply came quietly. Because we are finished preparing. The communication suddenly ended. Moments later, the human fleet slowly moved aside, opening a path out of the system. The alien commander understood the message. They were being allowed to leave. To report what they had seen. And when the Council fleet finally returned to galactic space and delivered their report, the chamber of the Galactic Council once again fell into complete silence. Because the species they once feared had not only survived exile. They had become the most powerful empire the galaxy had never seen. And humanity was no longer hiding. The report from the exploration fleet spread through the Galactic Council like a shockwave. For hours, the great chamber remained silent. The alien leaders stared at the holographic map floating in the center of the room. More than 400 star systems were glowing in blue. Each one marked as controlled territory of the human empire. For centuries, the Council believed humanity had disappeared into the darkness of space. But now the truth stood in front of them. Humanity had not vanished. They had grown. Stronger. Faster. And far more organized than anyone expected. One senator finally broke the silence. This must be a mistake. Another leader shook his head. The scouts confirmed it. They saw the fleets themselves. The High Chancellor leaned forward slowly. His glowing eyes were fixed on the map. How many ships did the scouts report? A military officer answered immediately. At least 3,000 warships in that system alone. Murmurs filled the chamber. 3,000. That was more ships than some entire civilizations possessed. But the officer had not finished. Commander reports that the system was only a production center. The chamber became quiet again. What do you mean production center? Someone asked. It means the ships were still being built. Several alien leaders looked uncomfortable. One elderly senator spoke carefully. If humanity controls 400 systems, their fleet could be tens of thousands of ships. The realization spread slowly across the chamber. For the first time in centuries, fear appeared in the eyes of the Council. Another leader stood up suddenly. We must destroy them now before they become unstoppable. But others quickly disagreed. You want to attack an empire we know nothing about? What if their technology is stronger than ours? What if they have been preparing for war for centuries? The chamber turned into chaos. Arguments filled the air. Some demanded immediate military action. Others demanded diplomacy. But one question continued to return again and again. Why had humanity waited so long? If they were so powerful, why had they not attacked the galaxy already? The High Chancellor finally raised his hand. Silence returned to the chamber. "We will send a diplomatic message to the human empire," he said. "And ask them one simple question. What are their intentions?" A long-distance communication probe was prepared immediately. It carried the official message of the Galactic Council. The probe traveled for several days before entering the outer systems controlled by humanity. Within minutes of entering the region, it was surrounded by dozens of human ships. But instead of destroying the probe, the human fleet allowed it to continue. The message was delivered directly to the capital world of the human empire. Only a few hours later, the council received a reply. The entire chamber gathered to watch the message. A holographic image appeared in the center of the room. A human officer stood on the bridge of a massive warship. Behind him, enormous fleets filled the background like endless metal oceans. His voice was calm. "Greetings, Galactic Council." Several alien leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The officer continued speaking. "We received your message asking about our intentions." He paused for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. "You want to know if humanity plans to attack." The chamber waited in silence. The officer slowly walked closer to the camera. "For 200 years you believed we were weak. You believed exile would destroy us. You believed removing us from the galaxy would protect your power." The human looked directly at the camera. "But exile did something very different. It gave us freedom." Images appeared behind him. Gigantic human cities. Planet-sized shipyards. Artificial rings surrounding entire stars. Weapons larger than moons. "You closed your gates to humanity," he said calmly. "So we built our own gates. You denied us your resources. So we built better ones. You pushed us into the darkness. And in that darkness, we built an empire." The chamber was completely silent. Then the human officer delivered the final sentence. "And now the galaxy must decide something very important. Do you wish to meet humanity as partners? Or as the empire you once tried to erase?" The transmission ended. For a long time, no one in the council chamber spoke. Because at that moment every alien leader understood the same terrifying truth. The day they banished humanity was the day they created the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The message from the human empire changed everything. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council did not know what to do. The chamber that once controlled the entire galaxy now felt smaller than ever. Alien leaders stared at the empty holographic screen where the human officer had just spoken. No one celebrated. No one argued. Because the truth was clear. Humanity had become something far greater than the council expected. Finally, the High Chancellor spoke. "How large is the human empire's fleet?" A military analyst stepped forward nervously. "Our best estimate is between 30 and 40,000 warships." The room filled with shocked whispers. That number was impossible. Even if the council united every species, their combined fleets might barely reach half that size. And worse, human ships were clearly more advanced. Another officer added new information. "Our scouts report that humans have built artificial shipyards around entire stars. Some systems appear to produce hundreds of ships every year." The Chancellor slowly leaned back in his seat. "So they are still expanding?" "Yes," the officer replied quietly. A senator stood suddenly. "We cannot allow this empire to grow any further." "What do you suggest?" another leader asked. "We attack them before they become unstoppable." But many leaders immediately rejected the idea. "Attack with what fleet? If we lose, the council will fall in a single war." Another alien spoke carefully. "Perhaps humanity does not want war." Several leaders turned toward him. "What makes you believe that?" someone asked. The senator pointed at the screen where the human officer had appeared. "They revealed their power, but they did not threaten us. The chamber became quiet again. For a moment, the possibility of peace seemed real. But then something unexpected happened. Long-range sensors across the galaxy suddenly detected a massive movement of ships. Thousands of unknown vessels were entering Council space. Emergency signals spread across dozens of systems. At first, many believed the human empire had begun its invasion. Fear spread quickly through the Council. Military commanders prepared defensive fleets. Planetary shields were activated. But when the ships finally appeared near the Council's border systems, something strange happened. They did not attack. Instead, the massive fleet stopped near the edge of Council territory. Thousands of enormous human ships formed a perfect line across the stars. At the center of the formation was a single colossal vessel. It was larger than anything the galaxy had ever built. Some analysts estimated it was the size of a small moon. A new transmission appeared on every Council screen. The same human officer stood on the bridge again. But this time, the background showed something even more terrifying. Behind his flagship stretched an endless ocean of human warships. His voice echoed across every communication channel. "Galactic Council, we have arrived." Panic spread through the chamber. But the officer calmly raised one hand. "Relax. If humanity wanted war, this conversation would not be happening." Several alien leaders exchanged nervous looks. The human continued speaking. 200 years ago you banished us. You believed humanity was dangerous. You believed we would destroy the balance of the galaxy." He paused for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. "But today you can finally see the truth." Images appeared behind him again. Human cities across hundreds of planets. Trade routes connecting entire sectors. Gigantic space stations protecting peaceful colonies. "This is what humanity built during exile," he said. "An empire, not of destruction, but of strength." The officer looked directly into the camera. "We did not come here for revenge. We came to offer the galaxy a choice." The chamber remained completely silent. The human's final words echoed through the room. "You once ruled this galaxy through fear. But the future does not belong to fear anymore. It belongs to those who are brave enough to build something greater." He stepped aside. Behind him, the massive human fleet remained still and silent. Not attacking. Not retreating. Simply waiting. Because after centuries of exile, humanity had returned to the galaxy. Not as refugees. Not as victims. But as the most powerful empire the stars had ever seen. And now, the entire galaxy had to decide whether it would stand beside humanity. Or be left behind by the future humans had built.